You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast, episode number 106. To make a fine film, you need three things: a great script, and a great script. Alfred Hitchcock.
Broadcasting from a dark, windowless room in Hollywood when we really should be working on that next draft. It's the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast, showing you the craft and business of screenwriting while teaching you how to make your screenplay bulletproof. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Now, today's show is sponsored by Bulletproof Script Coverage. Now, unlike other script coverage services, Bulletproof Script Coverage actually focuses on the kind of project you are and the goals of the project you are. So we actually break it down by three categories: micro budget, indie film market, and studio film. There's no reason to get coverage from a reader that's used to reading tentpole movies when your movie's going to be done for $100,000. And we wanted to focus on that at Bulletproof Script Coverage. Our readers have worked with Marvel Studios, CAA, WME, NBC, HBO, Disney, Scott Free, Warner Brothers, The Blacklist, and many, many more. So if you need your screenplay or TV script covered by professional readers, head on over to covermyscreenplay.com. And today's show is also sponsored by the Hart Chart Screenwriting Masterclass, taught by legendary screenwriter James V. Hart, the writer of Bram Stoker's Dracula, Hook, and Contact, to name a few. His unique story mapping system will teach you how to get your script ready for production and the marketplace. To gain instant access, head over to bulletproofscreenwriting.tv/Hart Chart. That's HART chart. Well, guys, today on the show, we have screenwriter, actor, director, producer, sketch comedian, author, and playwright, Rick Najera. Now, Rick has recently starred with films with Sidney Poitier, George Clooney, and more recently, Mario Lopez. And he began his career as a writer working on the sketch comedy classic In Living Color, where he wrote for almost 30 episodes as a staff writer. Then he went on to work with Mad TV, another legendary sketch comedy crew, and also wrote the wonderful Nothing Like the Holidays, which is an amazing Christmas film that I am a big, big fan of. Rick is a just amazing artist in general, from writing to performing. He's one of only 3 Latinos to ever write and star in their own play on Broadway. He's a remarkable guy, and I wanted to have him on the show to pick his brain about his creative process. And trust me, he did not disappoint. I had a ball talking to Rick. Our conversation is entertaining as well as full of knowledge bombs for you, the tribe. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Rick Najera. I'd like to welcome to the show Rick Najera, man. How are you doing, Rick?
Good, Alex. How are you doing?
As good as we can be in this crazy mixed up world that we live in today, sir.
Yeah, it is a crazy mixed up world. Yeah, there's so much going on. But, different stuff. I'm sure that everyone's tired of hearing about COVID, insurrections, and things like that. Let's talk about film.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So first and foremost, sir,
Yes.
How did you get into this ridiculous business?
It's very simple. I thought of the one thing that would just totally destroy my life and make my life really horrible. And I went, let's go for that job. And it had to be writer, because that is probably one of the worst jobs you can get in Hollywood. It's just, really horrible.
Now, why, sir? Why?
Well, I have to tell you, first of all, it's a lonely business.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like, it's lonely. No one, how many times do they go, oh my God, that's the writer of that film. Wait a minute. It's even, you can name off Star Wars and they'd go, oh my God. Oh, wait a minute. Is that James Earl Jones? Oh my God. Enough of you. Because people are attracted to the man or woman in the podium, and that's the person. We've had years of now, the cult of the director, like Orson Welles and people like that, or Quentin Tarantino. But say Quentin Tarantino, Orson Welles were also actors. They're performers. Mm-hmm. So they were hybrids. And I think that's kind of what's coming to the world now, is more hybrid. Yes, writer I'm a proud member of the WGA. I've, written a lot of things, but and I love my union. They're great. And my favorite thing was the screeners I used to get, but they don't really send at the screeners like they used to.
Not as much anymore. Not as much.
It's like you go online to see something. I'm like, well, I don't want to be online. It's a freaking pandemic. I don't want to be in front of a screen.
Yeah. I want to go to a theater and watch it.
I want popcorn. I can't watch a movie without popcorn in my hand, So it is more of what I think I am, and a lot of certain performers are, and writers and people like that. We tend to be hyphenates. Mm-hmm. And the old world of Hollywood actually was the Model T Ford world. So It's like the writer does 8-hour, he does the 8 o'clock hour family sitcom. That's the guy. And this person's the single camera guy, and that person's this. No, this is a writer, but he's really comedy, and this is this. So they approach writers that way. And since being Latino, I had to always create my own job. There wasn't, we talked earlier on the show that there isn't a lot of Latino writers, and, mm-hmm. and there's a reason for that. But we're just few. We're few and far between. I was on a plane, I think it was Mario Lopez and one other writer, and we were going to some event, and there's like 3 Latino writers on the plane. I said, if this plane goes down, we've lost half the writers in Hollywood. And at that time, it was kind of the truth. I mean, it was like we've lost half the writers if this plane goes down. I mean, and I hope I mentioned along with Josefina and the other writer, I forget who it was. But they would go, but it was true. It was like, what a tragedy, and it's sad because, no one wants to be the first in Hollywood. Or like, people have called me a pioneer in some ways, pioneer. I go, I've never wanted to be a pioneer. Pioneer really is a bad job because a pioneer gets killed by the bear, gets cholera, syphilis, some mercury poison in a silver mine in some place.
What's that show? What's that game? Oregon Trail. Oregon Trail.
Just the worst things you can imagine.
The eagle takes your baby.
You have no fingers or hands. You've got no personal hygiene.
Fair enough.
And you're just hoping that syphilis kills you instead of a Native American. I mean, it's just bad. So I want to be the guy that shows up in the train, with the the nice mustache and show up with the train and all that kind of world. That's the kind of guy I want to be. I don't want to be, better yet, the guy shows in a jet, just right to New York.
Even better.
It's great. But pioneer is a bad thing to be. You don't want to be a pioneer. It's just the danger level of pioneer is really up there. I mean, I went to Australia to film something, and that place was dangerous already. I could imagine someone going that place and being a pioneer. They have everything there will kill you. Spiders, snakes, everything. The people. I mean,
kangaroos box. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh, kangaroos aren't even cute animals. Like I saw a kangaroo, like 7 foot high, and they will gut you with their feet. Mm-hmm. So you go walk up with a carrot in your mouth and want to feed it gently, it'll kill you. And so that's to me pioneer. So I do not want to be a Latino pioneer because first of all, no one cares.
No one. So, I mean, so when you started out, how did you start getting work? Because I'll tell you what, I came up as a commercial director and in post-production as a Latino in Miami. Yeah. And, I started off in editing Latino, commercials and doing a lot of stuff for South America and things like that. But it was hard to break through to the American market and this is the mid 90s. So things are a bit different now in regards to acceptability. Before Guillermo and that whole crew.
And those guys aren't even doing what you would say particularly Latino stories.
No, they're not. But they're still, Latino, Latino directors and Robert Rodriguez and all that kind of stuff. It was a different world. So I could only imagine what it was like for you as a writer coming up in the 90s.
Well, first of all, they were surprised I could write in English. Was the bigger surprise. They was like, what? You could. Do you understand the words
that are coming out of my mouth? Right.
It was very hard. I got in this business because I believed you can be anything you want to be. Mm-hmm. That was drilled in my head. You can be whatever you want to be. And And I believed it. So I said, I'll be an actor, because being an actor, you can be any character you want to be. And then this business spends their entire energy telling you can't do that. And now there's exceptions are starting to happen. I watch it with Shonda Rhimes, who I'm a big fan of, people like that. But on the whole, from the 90s, just in 92, like when I first started out, it was in 92, I got in Living Color. And I got that after being an actor. I was working a lot, as I got into acting, I did, I did shows, every show from Columbo to whatever, to, China Beach and all these pilots and, West Wing. And I just didn't like the roles. I finally one day I was doing a film called Red Surf with George Clooney, and we both were leads. And he had 20 auditions afterwards. I had 0. And we both were leads. And I said, well, he's going out on 20 shows. Why can't I? And they said, well, he's going out for white roles. You only play Latinos. So it was ingrained, agents, managers, everyone. You play Latinos. Now, which Latino can you play? And at that time, it was like, you're either going to be drug lord, which hasn't changed terribly much, because look at Narcos and shows like that, or you're the gardener, or you're, whatever it is. It wasn't like, Dr. Sanchez, we're losing him. Dr. Sanchez, we're losing him. It was always, quick cut, pan left. And Dr. Sanchez is, I'm just working here as a gardener, but part-time, I am also a doctor. Now I would like to help with this situation.
See, now I want to watch that. I want to watch that medical drama.
Yeah. Dr. Sanchez, he's a gardener by day, but an ER doctor at night. I learned this during the war. He was great in El Salvador. I learned to stitch people back up. And also gardening.
Because I do like the gardening. It's steady work.
It calms me down. One night ER, daytime gardening. I like it. And I also have a truck. God. I bring the truck around, and I also make lunch for the people.
Oh, of course. Why
that would
not?
Be great.
That's a funny,
multi-dimensional character. I didn't get none of that. So I just said, listen, these roles aren't, they're dumb. I was very insulted by them.
Sure.
And I started off as a classical actor. I was an actual actor at the Old Globes Theater in San Diego. I was at La Jolla Playhouse. I did Time Magazine 10 Best Production Year. I was at American Conservatory Theater, all the best theaters in the nation. Mm-hmm. And the minute they found out I was Latino, it was like this. And it wasn't a secret. I wasn't walking around going, my name is Rick Najera. It sounded like an Arabic war cry. Najera. Mm-hmm. I had nothing as exotic and obviously not Anglo-American is when I got very, stuck in playing the Latino. So I said, if I'm going to play a stereotype, I better have written it. So I just started writing the roles, and I would turn the stereotypes upside down. I'd play a drug lord, but he was a news fanatic. I talk about the news. I was watching the news last night. I talk about these characters.
So Scarface, who watches CNN,
he's like, right? Yeah. I heard about a man. His name. He was executed in Texas by lethal injection. It's ironic, no? Lethal injection. He was a drug lord. So I'm thinking to myself, for his last meal, he asked for steak, French fries, and a Diet Coke. Why would you order a Diet Coke for your last meal? Are you worried about the calories? What are you talking about? For my last, I would do that. So I would take characters and really create,
flip them. Yeah.
Flip them. I'd flip them out and change them around. And it was a tough fight because you're in a battle with Latinos themselves looking at you, because you're going to, every time you're performing, Latinos looking at you going, no, he's not that good. Or I didn't like him, or for 1,000 reasons, mostly for envidia, envy of looking at someone. And so people assume you're full of yourself. Like I would get that. People assume I'm full of myself. Oh, you've done all these shows. You must think you're the most incredible person in the world. Mm-hmm. And I go, no, not at all. I'm the most insecure person in the world. Those shows make you insecure. Mm-hmm. Hollywood is geared to make you insecure. It's actually geared when you walk in the door and they look at you and they say, nah, just not good looking. Or walk in the door and say, you're not sexy. Hey, old. But it's like the words they use. No one's like, vibrant, wonderful.
No, it's not. It's not a town that builds you up.
No,
it's not that. Look. Brad Pitt and George Clooney were having problems getting roles when they were young. I mean, yeah. It took a minute. George Clooney took a while before he actually hit.
George Clooney, I'll tell you a story. I worked with George years ago, and we did that Red Surf together. And he invited me to his house to keep
Is this pre or post ER?
Oh, this is I believe pre ER. This is like
so he's still hustling at this point.
He's still hustling, and he's hustling. And I go to his house, and he has a pet pig. I remember his pet pig.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm like, wow, I got a pet pig. They're like, yeah. So we're in his house, we're doing tequila shots, and we're talking. He has a few of his friends over, and he says, we do the movie. Well, you're the bad guy, and I'm the good guy, and so we're going to kind of not hang out together to keep that kind of tension. And I said, understandable, no problem at all. And I look at his house, and I go, George, this is a great house. And he goes, oh, thank you. I go, so what do your parents do? Swear to God. I said, what do your parents do? So
he pissed himself.
He looks at me and he just goes, it's my house. I go, well, what do you do? And he goes, I'm an actor. I go, I'm an actor, but I don't have a house like this. Because he'd done pilots and stuff like that. But so he's making money, but he wasn't, so I didn't know. And I said, well, I'm an actor. How come I don't have a house like this? And he goes, you just have to ask for more money. So I said, okay, I'll ask for more money. But the truth is, it was just math. If you audition for 20 different roles, you're going to get one. And when you came to the Latino actors, there wasn't many roles. We didn't have many Latinos writing those roles. And even now, half the time when there is a Latino show, I almost assume I'll never get on there because Latinos, a lot of times they don't want to hire you themselves because they're looking and going, no, I want to have this cast filled with all these white writers behind the screens and stains. And I'm talking major Latinos who have told me, no, I want to have some, white writers around me because to them that's success.
Fair enough.
So that's changing, but it is a very tough business, and it's sad because the reason all of us go into art, and I'm sure it's the same with you too, is that you want to comment and explore the world you're living in, and talk about it and show people, look at this. This is such a unique way to see that. I was just watching. Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, and I love that writer. Yeah. And I was looking at what I love about his writing is, and in Shonda Rhimes too, what I love about their writing is they'll take it anywhere. And a lot of times when you're dealing with Latino stories in particular, you have Anglos, white Hollywood telling you what a Latino story is. There's the difference.
Well, like they did it with what's a black story, what's a gay story, whatever minority it is. I'll tell you what kind of story it is.
Exactly, and that is the problem, and so that's been the issue, and that's why I became so independent. That's why I produced my own shows and stuff like that because I had to.
So you got started with In Living Color because for people who aren't aware, In Living Color when it came out, I mean, Keenan was kind of like an 800-pound gorilla that could really do whatever he wanted, especially after the first season because it was such a runaway hit. And if you don't know what In Living Color is, it was basically just a Saturday Night Live, a sketch comedy.
It's Chappelle's Show. It was Chappelle's Show before the Chappelle Show.
Right. And it was, and then before then it was like really Saturday Night Live was the only thing on, honestly. But In Living Color just hit the mainstream in a way that, it really hit the zeitgeist. So I could only imagine, what was it like working with, were you there when Jim was there, Jim Carrey?
Oh, yeah. No, I worked with Jim till 4 a.m. I mean, this is my day.
Okay, tell me.
I'm working with Jim till like 4 to write a sketch called, the Juice Man sketch. It's like juice.
Right.
He's a character great. And about 10 o'clock, I go, hey, what if he's so crazy with his juice that he thinks he can fly or something and jumps out the window? That's a horrible idea. 4 a.m, Jim. Hey, what if the juice guy's so hyped up on the juice he thinks he can fly? He jumps out the window and dies. That's a great idea, Jim. Wonderful. Oh, my God. Brilliant.
You're going to go far, Jim. Mark my words.
That was it. And I want to say, Jim's a very, and it's like Jamie Foxx was hiding in my office because he was in some fight with so-and-so. And, Keenan was upset about something. And then Jennifer Lopez was walking in going, Rick, can I be an actress? Do you think I could be an actress?
Right.
And I told her, yes, you can. So it's like Rosie Perez and Rosie and I and Jennifer would have lunches together because we're the only Latinos there.
Right.
One of my favorite times in Living Color, I wrote a sketch because they wouldn't let me act. They're like, you can't act, you got to write. And I understood because most of the acting staff are the writers were actors and performers. Some of the great performers, some of the best performers were not on stage. They were actually, like guys like Robert Schimmel or great stand-up comedians. They're like these were the staff. I mean, the people it just goes on a who's who. In fact, I'm the least famous person in that room, which is like one time I was at an event and Jennifer Lopez there. And I said, say hello to Jennifer, say hello to Jennifer. I'm like, it's been some years. You probably won't remember me. I don't want to go up there and get maced by her security detail. And I just would like to avoid that for my ego. She's going to say something. And I'm not going to say anything. So she's walking up and it was Mark Anthony. And I get to meet Mark Anthony years later. But she walks up and she recognizes me. And she runs up and gives me a hug. It was such a beautiful moment. And she goes, Rick, we've done so well, haven't we? And I just looked and I was like, well, I'm at the party too, but I think you've done really well.
But my security detail hasn't gotten here yet.
No, my security detail is still getting the press pass and trying to get past there. My main security guy is on the floor being arrested right now. Priors.
Yes, and this is a rented suit. This is a rented suit.
Rented suit. So a lot of times, that was, that's really what the day was like. You just had tons of people around. It was a very exciting time, especially for people of color. I mean, just amazing. And it was Foxx, and Foxx would let you get away with stuff, even though Foxx now seems to be against people of color because at the time.
Well, no, at the time, but they let when Foxx first showed up, as far as the network was concerned, they had nothing to lose. So they just like, we got Married with Children. Sure. The anti-Cosby Show. Great. Simpsons. Why not?
It was basically this kind of, it was the bad boys.
Yeah,
we were the true not ready for primetime players. And it was such a unique time in Hollywood. And funny, I still have my Living Color jacket that they gave me. So you had to give me a jacket. And I didn't know it was a hit show until I wore it one day at an airport. Because remember, we're there all day long and at night till 4 a.m. or some amazing, ridiculous amount because you write so many sketches and do so much work that none of us had a personal life.
Right.
No one had a personal life. So I didn't, you'd work till Friday, you'd be done about 4 or whatever it was. You'd go to sleep the next day. It takes you one day to get yourself together because you feel like you've just been beaten like a piñata. And then Sunday, you're like, oh, I should get my laundry done, or I should get to pay some bills or do whatever. And then, oh my God, what happened this time? I got to be there 10 a.m. to pitch. And one time, the pressure of pitching was so hard because you're in a room with Robert Schimmel, the greatest writers there is, Larry Wilmore, all these people that are in the room with you, and everyone's got to get something on the air. Everything's got to, because if you don't, you pitch, and they'd say, "Oh, I love that idea. It's great. Okay, we'll go with that idea, and then you had to work." And this wasn't nice. This wasn't, oh, we're so wonderful idea. This is great. Let's go forward with this. It was like, all right, you got till 12. You do this done.
It's pretty brutal in those rooms, from what I hear.
Or the worst part, they'd walk in and say, you got nothing. They don't want any of your pitches. You better, you're going to pitch again in a few hours, some ideas. So you'd have to come back when you've worked all amount of time on this to come back with a story. And if they didn't like it for whatever reason, it just, so-and-so's not going to play that well. That's not going to work. No. You had to come up with new ideas. So you're constantly coming up with, I had one writer who's, well-known writer, worked on tons of shows. He gets in there and he was intimidating me because he walks up. He's like, yeah, I've got 100 A-list sketches. These are 100 A sketches that will just, no one will stop these ideas. This is the best pitch. I've worked for a year coming up with ideas for this show. He's telling me this stuff. I'm like, wow, I'm intimidated. And I got my B list of sketches, I got about 200 of those. That means, not guaranteed. It's still good. Could use it. My C, I got 300 of those. They're good premises. Maybe they need some work. Maybe they do it to be, B's and maybe 5 A's. And he's like this whole math.
Wow. Humble.
And within a week, he comes in the office and goes, I got nothing, man. I got nothing.
They destroyed me, man. They destroyed me.
Nothing. And he's like thinking of ideas. So I would see grown men cry.
Wow.
And people needed ideas bad. It was like crack. It was like crack in the 90s or 80s. It was like, it was sad. So they would go through so much material and you would have to come up with the ideas. And, and I worked on other shows years later, like Mad TV or.
How was it working? Because Mad TV was like the kind of almost the sequel to In Living Color in some ways. In some ways.
It was a sequel, but Living Color had more the stand-up comic sensibility, the Jamie Foxx, that stuff. Mad TV had the Groundlings sensibility.
Yeah.
More like sketch comedy from the Groundlings. Groundlings is a very particular style. They use a lot of wigs. They use a lot of different stuff. They look at Pee Wee Herman and Will Ferrell as their saints. They pray to them. And so they have a different style. But to me, it was kind of cultish in some ways because you had to have that school. I like the stand-up comedy schools, the Chappelles, those guys like that, because in stand-up comedy, you have the Comedy Store, and then you've got the Improv, and you've got the Laugh Factory. But each one has their own style in schools. And so it's much more varied. Groundlings was a very definite style. Then it came UCB and all these others.
And what years were you at Mad TV?
Gosh, I got to think. Maybe like around 2005 or something like that.
Starting around 2005?
Yeah, I think I remember. I mean, I wrote a lot of those things. I mean, it's in my IMDb, and I read that stuff, and I'm like, what? I didn't remember that.
So you missed the time that Jilly was there, Jill Michelle.
No.
Yeah.
Well, Jilly I worked with later on. Jilly and I worked together on Latinologues, my other show that was on Broadway.
Well,
so Jilly, she's wonderful.
She was the star of my first feature.
Wow, which one was that?
This is Meg. I directed her comedy special, and I've been friends with Jill for about a decade. So I've worked with her on tons of stuff. She's
a very close friend. I really like her a lot because I interviewed her for my podcast, Najera in America.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure I don't want to siphon your 1 million man audience.
I'll put a link in the show notes, sir.
Yeah, put a link on the show because, listen, guys like me don't have the audience that you do. So, but Najera in America,
sure.
I had Jilly on, and she's just a great person. She did, I think it was Reno 911.
Yeah. She's done
shows like that. So the comedy school in Hollywood is very small. We all kind of know each other.
Yeah, that's one thing I've known since I got here almost a dozen years ago. I met Jilly 3 months in, by the way. 3 months after I got here, I met Jilly, and she starred in a short film that I shot. Like I was hired to do within 3 months of getting here. It was like, when I got here, I'm like, this is Hollywood. Great. This is the way it's always going to be. I'm just going to and that whole project turned into a shit show. And, but she was wonderful. We always stayed in touch.
Well, that's where you can say, this is Hollywood.
This is Hollywood.
Now this is Hollywood.
Yeah. But it's a very small town and everybody knows everybody. It's so weird because, and the more I do these shows, like when I do this show and my other podcasts, I'll talk to a guest and I'm like, oh, I know. Do you know this person? Yeah, I know that person. And it's just like everyone knows everybody. So and this is something for the audience listening, don't be an ass because it will get back to you. People will talk.
Oh, yeah, no, it's with me. It's like, I go through normally for me, I run into more just, I don't think people understand me. I don't think they've ever understood me because I don't fit anything. It's not like you go.
Well, you're not in a box.
I'm not in a box. I write, I direct, act.
Yeah.
I've done everything. I've been a VP at a network and, do all this stuff. Not a big network, but still a network. And so I've seen the world very differently. And I come up, like I'm going to do a web show in February, not a web show, a masterclass on writing in February. And
Great.
so So people go like, hey, he's actually teaching or doing something like that. Because I came from a school where you had to do everything. And that's very Latino. You know, it's like,
I know.
I've never met a Latino that you go to in front of Home Depot. Can you do tile? Oh, yeah. I can do tile. Can you do plumbing? Oh, sure. I got my tools. Can you do
surgery? Surgery? Can you do surgery?
Oh, yeah. I can do crack open the heart. I need a donor, but I got my tools. You got a donor. I got my tools. I can do this for you. Pure. So it just that's where people have been.
I mean, look, I have a hat on that says hustle. I mean, there's it's on brand for me, sir. I understand.
I woke up this morning going, every day I'm hustling.
Every day I'm hustling.
Because like even before, every day I'm hustling. You got it. That's our mantra. Every day I'm hustling.
You know, it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is.
It is the way it is. And I thought about it as my son started acting in commercials and he was doing really quite well. And he was like, Dad, I want to do commercials right now. I want to study school. And like, and part of me was like, if I was in Tijuana, you would have a box of chicles in your hand going chicle, chicle, you would work. That's the way our Latinos are. You know, it's like people go, I have children because I love them. And also it's like Latinos, like, we need a crew. And so we better have some kids to get that crew.
We need
some
hands.
I don't trust nobody but my family.
That's hilarious.
Even though I can't stand them, I still don't trust them.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
You were able to make an anomaly in Hollywood, which was a movie called Nothing Like the Holidays, which was a holiday Christmas movie, which I saw. And when I saw it, I mean, the cast is amazing. And it was basically a Latino Christmas movie, with a real representation of what it's like. And, it's always weird with Latinos because we're not just one block. We're 30 or 40 different tribes, if you will, depending, I'm Cuban, Mexican, everything from everywhere, from Chile, so everyone they're all different kinds of traditions. We all kind of have similar traditions. Yeah. But, so even when nothing like the holidays, I saw myself in it, but it still wasn't a Cuban Christmas, but it was.
No, it's still, there's certain things you relate to, like, doing Latinolugues as long as I did. Mm-hmm. And, getting that show on Broadway was the first successful Latino play on Broadway.
Right.
They called it a play, right? Which to me is more of a comedy special, series of monologues. But they called it a play, which put me in direct competition with all the big multi-million-dollar plays. I'm like, no, don't call me a play. Call me a special theatrical event or something that can get the Tony. Like if I brought Latinologues back, I could actually get the Tony for a revival. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of times when you would do work like, Latinologues or that kind of stuff, people didn't know what to label it. We're hard to label. Nothing like the holidays, what you saw. I'll tell you where you can relate. You're Caribbean. Yeah. And Puerto Ricans are still Caribbean. Now, The joke is Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico would call Cubans tuves. They would say tuves. And and that means basically I used to have. So it's like every time you meet a Cuban in Puerto Rico, like, coño, believe me, I'm back. That's not an avocado. Back in Havana, the avocados would fall from a tree and kill you. It'd be like, everything was just hyper beautiful of what Cuba was. And of course, that's a human aspect that we're looking back. Like I thought my years in high school were wonderful. And then I'm like, now I luckily don't look back at high school and go, that was the best time of my life but there are people who do. They look back and they go, I was the football captain or all this.
I'll tell you a joke. If I may be so bold as to tell you a joke. Please. What's the difference between an Argentinian and a Cuban?
What?
So the Argentinian thinks he knows everything, but the Cuban knows he knows everything.
Yes. What was the other one? Was like it was like an Argentinian, if they sell you what they're worth, what they think they're worth.
Oh my God.
You're paying millions.
But those are those kind of like subtleties when you're writing. It's like, I remember doing commercials for Latin America and I literally had to version out 30 different VOs.
Sure.
Because if you have a Puerto Rican VO guy in Mexico, that's not going to fly.
No.
You have to. And that was the first time I kind of really understood, like, oh, okay, this is like, everything is a little different. So when you're writing for this kind of audience, it's not easy. You're trying to appease a bunch of different audiences.
Yeah. Well, what I would with my writing, I've worked everywhere in the United States and outside of the United States. So I worked for Mexico. I worked for Televisa down in Mexico. Mm-hmm. I've worked a lot of places, all speaking horrible Spanish, which is to me the most amazing thing because I grew up Chicano in California. We're known for getting a C in Spanish. That's like our deal. If you're Chicano and you speak great Spanish, you're not a Chicano. It's like I was on Despierta America. They were interviewing me in Spanish. I'm like, oh, it's giving me a headache. Oh my God, I got to go through this thing. And I'm of course understanding and doing this, but a lot of words I just don't know. Like this is a quick side story. I was in Mexico, in Chihuahua, Mexico, and I had a bodyguard, and he goes, his car keeps driving by me, and he goes, we have to leave. And I go, why? He goes, sicarios. And I go, oh, there's a mural around here. I'd love it. I love his work. Sicarios is wonderful. You could go see what that. So I thought he said sicarios because I couldn't understand sicario. No. And so finally I go back to the hotel and I go, where's that mural you're going to show me? He goes, what mural? I go, sicarios. He goes, sicarios. He's like correcting me. And I go, oh, well, what does that mean? He goes, assassins. I go, assassins? Like those guys driving by me were assassins? I go, how do you know? He goes, because they kidnapped me. I go, they kidnapped you? He goes, yeah. I go, well, what kind of bodyguard are you if you're getting kidnapped by the same people to protect me from?
I'm going to have to let you go. I'm sorry.
Yeah. He goes, I go, who normally do you bodyguard? He goes, the chief of police of Chihuahua. Uh-huh. He's a bodyguard for the chief of police. This guy was a major guy. Yeah. He said it took him 24 narcos along with army guys to capture him. And, but it's, I didn't know. So when I started working for, Mexico and places like that, I had to have an education because there's so much different flavors. So if I go to Miami and perform and I do one of my monologues, then the truth is, if I do a monologue, say Cuba Libre, which is about a Cuban prostitute in Cuba, very, gut wrenching, hard monologue. To perform, not by me, but actor and the actress in the company would do that, and I would hear people crying in the audience because it affected them so much. Yet when I was doing monologue about 9/11 in New York on Broadway, a whole nother cry and feeling.
Sure.
So I can tell what cities I'm performing in. If I was doing say Miss East LA on the West Coast about a beauty pageant girl that doesn't want to give up her crown. Mm-hmm. I would take to New York. I did as Miss Puerto Rican Pride Parade.
Of course, you have to shift it a little bit. You
shift it, you adjust it. In Miami, I'm doing Alien Gonzalez, and I'm saying, I'm basically yelling "Screw Cuba" or "Screw Castro."
Right.
Every Cuban is applauding me and loves me forever.
Sure.
So
you're playing to the audience.
You have to. It's what Commedia dell'arte did. Mm-hmm. Commedia dell'arte was a form of theater throughout Italy and around, I think it was, the Renaissance era around that. People would go to each town and listen for the gossip, listen to things, and they would take it. And if you look at Saturday Night Live, any of these shows now in sketch-wise, that's what they are. They're commedia dell'arte. They're listening to the gossip. They're putting it out there. You got the audience going, oh, I can't believe they went there. And what comedy is, the cathartic release of ideas and expressions that you shouldn't be able to say on stage. But since you're saying it, you'll get applause and laughter.
Now, you're very unique in the sense that you had a Broadway show, a hit Broadway show. Excuse me, it's not a show, it's not a play. It's a special event.
I call it a special event. But it was on Broadway.
It was on Broadway, and you did. Yeah. So how do you approach, as a writer, a Broadway show?
You approach the same way you do with all writing, which is basically it's a story. It's a beginning, middle, and end. Mm-hmm. The way I learned writing was my father. We were very poor, and he would go to see a movie, and he couldn't afford to take me, so he'd come back from the movie, and he would explain the movie to me with such graphic detail, and this happened, that. And then years later, I'd see the movie and I'd be really disappointed. I was like, oh, it's boring. My dad told me
so much better.
So much better. He told the story and the man and what he felt. And I learned storytelling through him. And that's really what it is telling a story. Now, you can take a story and like say Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's Yoda as a child. And then we're seeing Yoda as an adult. And then when you look at a story like Breaking Bad and you go, well, Breaking Bad, here's Saul before Breaking Bad. Here's the early part of his career. Let me understand what we went through.
Coming up to Breaking Bad, yeah.
Coming up. And so we're all going through stories that we just don't know the ending most of the time. And that's also true in life. It's like we could sit there and have this great, wonderful conversation and this, and then it's like, did you hear? Well, what do you mean? The COVID. Oh no, not Alex. So it's like, yeah, immediately afterwards, somehow he went outside.
Yeah, a plane dropped from the sky.
Anything. And that's the thing is we don't know the end of the story. And that is what life is. So as storytellers, we're making up how we think the story is, but there is no ending because the biggest lie a storyteller tells is, and this is what's said, remember as a child, what we heard was, and they lived happily ever after. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a lie. Because I saw O.J. Simpson one time as a kid. I remember seeing O.J. Simpson go, oh wow, he's with this blonde woman. I was like impressed. I think it was a busboy or something.
Mm-hmm. He did the Naked Gun movies. I mean, he arrived.
To me, it was like, oh my God. Now, cut 2 years later, he's in a white Bronco going down the freeway in a slow chase,
and then stopped there, and they lived happily ever after.
Yeah, they lived happily. Yeah. So we don't live happily ever after. So storytelling is a continual evolution of a human life from before and after. And so that's why, stories are so, you can take a story like Breaking Bad and go to the prequel or go to the sequel or it's still a story, but every story has a beginning, middle, and end. But the end is there will be no end. It continues until somehow, I mean, you look at the greatest books or stories are never ending. In fact, there was a movie called A Never Ending Story.
There was three of them, apparently.
Three of them.
There was three of them. I only saw the first and second. I didn't even know there was a third.
That's true of Hollywood. It's a never ending story. There's always a different way to tell the story. It's like it's like you start noticing you're older when you go, oh, that's the remake? You're like, what?
Oh, tell me about it. Are you kidding? I mean, yeah, you start looking at like how many Batmans have we, like I remember when Batman 89 showed up and it was the biggest event of the year. I mean, 89 was an amazing year for movies. And now what has there been, like 15 Batmans at this point?
It's like Batman's online. There's a guy who plays Batman with just a voice.
He
scares his wife.
Batman Dad, Bat Dad.
Yeah.
He's so good. He's so good.
There's so many versions of Batman. And then you kind of look and you go, there's only so many versions of stories. I mean, the basic structure is beginning, middle, and end. And then you go, whose eyes are we watching the story through? Are we watching it from the father, from the son, the daughter? Where's my entrance in this story? So stories as complex as they are really are very simple. We learn them as kids. We need that completion. We need to feel that completion. Like, yeah, you thought, like Alfred Hitchcock when he's doing Vertigo, and the man is standing there. He's conquered, Jimmy Stewart has conquered his fear to be on top of that ledge. And you go, wow, that moment. But there's a story after that. He has to go walk down the stairs, call his office, tells this is what happened, explain it, fill out paperwork. Then he has to go home. He's got to serve himself a drink. And later on, he dies, but his son takes up the mantle of being, So this is what life is. We're a never-ending story, and as writers and people, we're telling people a story that we recognize, and we hope they recognize it too. And Nothing Like the Holidays is a family story that just happens to be Latino.
Right, exactly. Now you've done a lot of acting and writing in your life. Yeah. What do you enjoy doing more?
I like acting more for one reason. This is the difference. Here's the difference. Acting. Mr. Najera, ready for you on the set. Now here's writing. This is a piece of crap. What are you talking about? I said we needed this. Don't you understand? He's not available. The guy's in rehab. You got to write it for this person. What is going on with you? They said you're talented.
I mean, this is supposed to be a positive show about writing, so yes, I'm not sure. No, it's no.
You will be positively miserable.
No. Look, I'm actually one of the more honest shows about the film industry that there's on in podcasting. So I'm very real and raw about it. But what you just said is not wrong.
No, it's not wrong, because I remember being in Living Color. It was a very classic example. I was wearing sweats, looking like just the worst homeless person you could imagine. Been writing for days. And I remember seeing this actor. He had an under 5 in the show. Did one line. And he was like, there was all these women around him. He's talking and everybody is, yeah, I've done this. I've done this. And me is like, coffee. I need coffee. What are you doing in line? I need food, and they were totally different being treated. And so when I would act, it's just how well they treat actors. It's just such a difference. A writer, unless you're a major showrunner, you might be treated a certain way. But on the whole, they just, the writers are the guys that were getting beat up in high school. They were the ones who went to Comic-Con and came back and told all their friends and things like that. I didn't fit that form of a writer. I tended to be much more street. I grew up with tough people and situations and that's one thing about being a Latino is literally like just in Living Color. I remember Salma Hayek came to visit me one day and all the male writers, totally lost
their mind.
Oh, they're like, oh my God, look who's visiting you. And she wasn't even famous at this point. I took her to Denny's actually. And we had lunch at Denny's and I came back.
This is pre Desperado?
Oh, big time pre-Desperado. She had just flown into LA. She'd been maybe 3 months in LA.
And so like you're a year away. Like that's probably because she was like 94, 95 when she did Desperado.
It was like
93, 94.
So I was 92, I think it was.
Sure. Oh, sure. She was fresh off the boat.
And ironically, I'm talking to, Jennifer Lopez. And I'm like, do you want to go to lunch? No, I'm cool. Okay, I'm going to lunch. What are you going to do? I'm going to meet this Latina called me up and she wants to meet me because I'm a Latino writer. It's how rare we were. And I took her to Denny's and got her, I got the Grand Slam.
Obviously. You want to treat Salma right. So
and I got to treat her right. No, I just told her, I said, look, I have 1 hour and Denny's is right next door. She said, Denny's? It's like,
Guess un Denny's.
Guess un Denny's. It's $2 biscuit, $2. And so I took her there and we were talking. She said, you confuse me. You're a writer, you're an actor, you do everything. And I try to explain to her that she came from the world of Televisa. Right. Where you were an actor. And you were a writer and you were a director and all these different things. And I'm like, as a Latino in Hollywood, you have to do everything. You do, because you always have to remain relevant. You always have to be doing something and you always have to have something to say. And to do that, to be fresh and be relevant and to talk, you've got to be out. You've got to be out and about. And I would, luckily as a stand-up or as a comic, when I'd go out and do stand-up comedy, you're out normally. But once I got married, it was difficult to do that. I became a dad. I did a Showtime special called Diary of a Dad Man, which was about becoming a dad. How it was a unique thing because I did not want to be a dad. I've told my kids that many times. I'm arguing with them. I did not want you.
I didn't even want you here.
Didn't even want you. You are a mistake. I'll give it in Spanish. Un falta.
Un falta.
But
one night of tequila and look what came out.
There you were. I don't know how that happened. I blame your mother.
I blame your father.
No, it was, I tell them jokingly, of course, that, that I did not, but men, especially Latino men, we weren't necessarily taught. We were taught to work. You're going to work. And you probably never see your kids, but you better bring home money and you better do all these different things. That was your idea. You don't see little boys playing with dolls going, someday I'm going to hold a doll like this in my hands and rock it to sleep. And no, we're not trained that way. So for me, having spent so many years in the business and it's like, I can't believe I just got married, and she got pregnant right away. literally right away. I mean, she told me, she's like, it'll take me years to get pregnant.
Of course.
In vitro. Most of my friends are doing in vitro. And I'm like, nah, here. I'm Mexican. There's one thing our people do extremely well. Pregnancy.
So you brushed your shoulder against hers, and that was it.
I looked at her.
You looked at her, and it was done.
It was it. It was like, I gleaned
using the force. You were using the force.
I used the force.
There you go.
You are pregnant.
You're pregnant at this point.
She got pregnant, and we had kids right away. We have 3. So,
wow.
And we're, still married. So, that's in the Hollywood.
That's a success in Hollywood.
Well, this is our 18th year anniversary.
Wait a minute. So let's just clarify for everybody listening what a miracle it is that you're still married. You're in Hollywood, and you're a stand-up.
Yeah, and
a stand-up, and a performer, and a writer. So, I mean, you are an anomaly, sir. Because I've known many a stand-up in my life, and worked with many, and they are very interesting souls.
Well, the thing with stand-ups, it's a rowdy world. There's no two ways about it. It's just a very rowdy drink, talk, hang out world. It's like, and that's a unique thing. That was really kind of strange. I think. But, women don't ever give you extra points for that. They don't go, it's amazing. It's like you expected. And I think it is. So, yeah, we've been married 18 years, and being married in Hollywood is probably the real toughest job in Hollywood.
But you started off as a stand-up first, right?
I did. Well, I started off as an actor. I was an actor. I did, every cop drama. I mean,
right.
Hill Street Blues. I mean, I'm not going to age myself, but I was like the last year of Hill Street Blues.
Wasn't that shot in black and white and was like let in by Gunsmoke?
He was next to Gunsmoke set. I remember that. And they were talking about a show called Gilligan's Island. They didn't do 20 years later. And I did the Spanish version, Gilberto's Island.
What? Oh man.
So sad.
Jesus.
Gilberto, you'll hear something. What's that sound? Are these sharks getting close? What's going on? Gilberto's Island.
Too soon.
Yeah, it was. It was unique in Hollywood that, it's actually. I mean, in a weird way, it's tragic. It is. You go and you say, my father was in Vietnam and World War II, and how many World War II movies have I seen a Latino in? And then you go, and how many do you see in Vietnam? In Vietnam, I think the platoon has a camera pan and of a guy with a Virgin of Guadalupe, statue or something. I think that was it. And they went, they represents every single Latino that went through Vietnam and did that. Whereas my family actually did it. So I saw how Hollywood never told our stories. That's became my passion, was to tell our stories.
Did you ever see the movie Hollywood Shuffle?
Yeah, no, I worked with Robert Townsend. I worked at his TV show.
Right. So Robert, I mean, I've said this on the show multiple times. I think he doesn't get the credit he deserves because before that whole, I'm going to go do my movie on a credit card thing of the 90s and Clerks and then Mariachi and that whole thing. He did it first. He did it in 87. I remember because I was working at a video store at the time. So I remember it. Yeah.
That's one of those rare things you hear about.
Yes. I was working on a video store at that time. And I remember, and
he's going to bring back video.
Yes. And then he made that movie specifically because he was exactly what you're talking about in the Latino experience. He was talking about in the Black experience, which was Hollywood wasn't telling him stories. They're going to tell you're going to be the slave, or you're going to be the gangster, or you're going to be this. And there's this great skit in Hollywood Shuffle where he's like a Juilliard trained actor, and he's talking with a British accent, and he has a whole bunch of African Americans who are speaking British, and then all of a sudden you have like the whitest guy in the world going, nah, man, when you talk jive, you got to talk like this. And you see them trying to train the African American guys how to talk gangster and stuff. And it was such a spear into Hollywood. It was so wonderful. It was wonderful.
It was also so true. I remember that time I was doing General Hospital. I was an actor on General Hospital. Mm-hmm. And I played Juan from the Biscayne Islands. And this is years ago. I'll tell you how long ago it was. I was that, Latino galán kind of character.
Okay. Oh,
Monica, por favor, help me, Monica. So this
Ricardo Montalban. That's the Ricardo Montalban style. Got it.
I wrote for the guy. I knew Ricardo Montalban. I mean, I've worked with all these people.
You know everybody. Do you know?
Virtually, I do, and I don't want to tell you the truth because
Have you worked with Robert? Did you ever work with Robert?
I met Robert. Robert came to In Living Color, and I brought him to. I toured him around in Living Color, and he invited me to his movie, and I saw it. I went to the screening.
Of what, mariachi or?
Yeah. Oh, he didn't know anyone in Hollywood, and I was like, "Hey, you're Mexican, you're Latino. Hey, I'm doing Living Color. Please come by. I'd love to show you around." And that's how you do it. You'd actually call people up and say, "Hey, man, I hear you're Latino. I'm Latino too. All right, cool, man. Why don't you come by?" Or it was a very much a feeling of helping one another. I don't think that exists now. By the time there was Paul Rodriguez, and
there was not many, man. I honestly,
George Lopez. I knew George. We all knew each other coming up. So, it's very much a small world where since you know everybody, you would just call people up. I mean, you just did. So Robert and guys like that and George. And so we were very rare. But before us came, Ricardo Montalban. I remember working for him and writing him a speech for some, theatrical event. And I was like, I felt like a kid. I was at his house, a beautiful house. And he was like, Ricky, no, Ricky. What about, he called me Ricky. I mean, but as a Latino, we understood he was the adult. He was the man. So I had a great deal of respect for him. I mean, Eddie Olmos is my neighbor. And so
I've met Eddie. Eddie's wonderful. Eddie's wonderful, man. Eddie's
a wonderful guy. The guy's he's like family. He's a saint. I mean, I love the guy.
Yeah, I sat down with him talking. I had a lunch with him once, and I was talking to him about Miami Vice, and he was like, "Oh, let me tell you about Miami Vice." And he would just go into this whole all the backstories. Like, yeah, the other guy, when I replaced him after 3 episodes, and then Don Johnson came in, and I set him straight day one, and that was the end of that. And he just started talking all this stuff, and he's so cool. And Blade Runner and all that. I mean, he's just he's Eddie Olmos. He's Eddie Olmos.
He's a legend, and that's the thing is that's the part of Hollywood I like, where people that, got to work with Cheech Marin. He directed me on Broadway. And he's amazing. And my other show, Latino Thought Makers, where I interview these celebrities, stars. I think for me, it fits my purpose in life that I feel Latinos are the solution, never the problem. Mm-hmm. And if you get to know us, you'll realize that. So what Latino Thought Makers does, which I do that show, is to introduce people to Latinos in a different way, to see us as a solution, not the problem. And what comedy does, comedy opens the door. I worked on Culture Clash, which was at Foxx. I was one of the writers on that show. Culture Clash, In Living Color, Mad TV. I could go off comedy-wise. It's a pretty good resume, in terms of who I've worked with and all that stuff. But those aren't the moments. The moments you remember are the silliest moments in the world. Just like when at the end of the day, when you're at a studio and everyone's putting away all the equipment and it's going to be sunset and you feel you've been part of a dream factory, you've done something. Those are the moments I remember. I just go, that's such a beautiful, they call it the martini shot. And, and those are moments where you go, yeah,
it's worth it. Good. All the pain's worth it.
Yeah. And I remember that because I remember as a kid, I saw a movie, it was a black and white film, and the guy's, he's an actor, and his whole life has been, every time he's about to make it, he gets drafted to the Korean War. So you cut to, there's 50,000 Koreans coming toward him, a Chinese. He's at a machine gun shooting it, and all these, just everything. Finally, he gets the big role of his life, and he's about to walk on stage, and someone turns to him and goes, "Is it worth it?" And he looks and he goes, "Yeah, it's worth it." And this is after 50,000 Chinese and all these things, all the stuff he's gone through. And he goes, it's worth it. And I think that's what it is that when you do it and we share a love for something that is hard for other people to understand. It's tangible. That we love the business of making up stories.
But isn't it insane? But that's the insanity of this this whole thing. I've been saying for a long time that it's an illness. It's like once you get bitten by this, it's in your bloodstream and it will never go away. It will flare up. Yeah. It can be dormant for 20 years. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I talk to filmmakers who are like, hey, I just turned 60. I'm retired, but what I really want to do is direct. So what do I need to do? And they were a doctor or something like that all their life. And they're just like, I really wish I would have gone down that road, but now I'm here and I want to do it. It never goes away. Even I've been in this business 25 plus years now, and going in and out, and I've wanted to leave because it got so difficult sometimes. And I literally just I can't take the pain anymore. And I would go for a minute and then I would come back, and I'd always have one foot in or one foot. I never truly left it ever.
Yeah. You never truly retire. I always tell people, because every time I meet someone who said, anyone who makes that announcement, I'm retired, I'm not doing this anymore. They're always back the next year going, okay, well, I got really bored. All right. It's like, just never say retired, because it's not an occupation. It's a lifestyle. Yeah. So if you sit there and you say, my lifestyle is being an artist, my lifestyle is creating, my lifestyle is doing that. And I can do it through stage, page, or many different forms. And this is just like us having this podcast and us talking. We're sharing a love for a craft or an industry. Not necessarily industry, really for the craft, for the art of it. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it is. We're sharing a love for something that we truly do love.
Now, what do you say to writers listening right now, and filmmakers for that matter, listening right now, who are struggling to get their voice heard, to get their thing out there, to get their work seen, or they're just going, they're basically in the Korean War right now, and there's 50,000 Chinese coming at them, or the enemy is coming at them. Yeah. What's the words that you can say to them to keep them going, and to keep that dream going?
It's actually, I haven't thought about this for a while, so thank you for bringing this up. This is why I like talking about the industry with other people. You really kind of, you think about it. Oh yeah.
You work it out. Yeah.
You work it out. So the workout is this. My father was a door-to-door salesman, and he'd go door to door. And when I do stand up, I'd give him an accent. The truth is, he didn't have an accent, but no one believed.
But it's funnier with an accent.
It's funnier with an accent. I hate to say it, but it really was. People, because if I did it with his regular voice, people were like, so you said your dad's Mexican. I go, yeah.
Oh, hold on a second. Bueno, my friend.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay, now I understand. I understand now.
So, but my father, would tell me this story. And he was a member of Toastmasters and all this stuff. And he spoke beautifully. He told me, Rick, I really want you to speak beautifully. If you spoke beautifully, I'd be very proud of you. So that's why I became a Shakespearean actor at the Old Globe when I was 17. I wanted to speak beautiful. So I studied Shakespeare and I memorized it and all that. So one day he told me, I was auditioning for something. I didn't get it. And he goes, oh, yeah. I said, I didn't get it, Dad. And normally I grew up in San Diego, so I was working all the time. I mean, I was like the actor that could work. And because the talent pool was less. There's great people, but there was just more. I didn't have to audition against 50 people in a national search and 2,500.
It'd be 15 people.
15 people. And I knew most of them. And I was like, hey, what are you doing? So I auditioned for Second City Improv Chicago. They're doing a special in San Diego. And they hired 2 unknown actors. For the first callback, I didn't get it. They weren't sure. And the second callback, finally got it. And I told my dad, I'm auditioning for this thing, and I didn't get it. He goes, well, let me tell you a story. He goes, every day I go out and I knock on a door and I try to sell my things. He had pots and pans he sold. And he goes, then I go to another door. But around the 100th door, finally someone says yes. You have to knock on a lot of doors to hear no before you finally hear the one yes. And that was it. Knock on a lot of doors. So I went back to the audition. I got the role. And the other unknown actor in San Diego got it was Whoopi Goldberg. So it was Whoopi Goldberg and I got a Second City Improv special together in San Diego. So
and that was
that's a true story.
So that's pre-Color Purple. So we're talking 84, 83.
Oh, 84. It was pre her one woman show.
Wow. So this is early.
Yeah, it was early. I was a kid. I was like, 17 or something, at the Old Globe. And then I had an audition. I think I just turned 18. And I felt she would sneak me into bars, and I would use a false ID. She was a bad influence. But
she was.
But she taught me a lot. She taught me that improv is saying yes. And, what acting is and writing and all this stuff is saying yes to a dream. But if you remember the starting out writers hearing that, remember, you have to hear a lot of no's before you hear yes. And once you get that mantra in your head, you will, and here's a second one. What you think is success may not be what your idea of success is.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So absolutely.
That's a lot of times, because I struggle with it, like sometimes I'm like, I'm the biggest loser in the world. Oh my Lord. Sure, I got to play on Broadway, but Lin-Manuel Miranda, wow.
Well, there's always a bigger fish. There's always a bigger fish.
Got Hamilton. Oh man, I did 137 performances with an extension, the first one like that. Well, they were off Broadway and they saw, hey, you could be Broadway. So it got people thinking that direction, but the man just nailed it. And so when you start to get that comparison, and I think about it and it's like, well, Whoopi Goldberg, why aren't I Whoopi Goldberg?
Why did I win the Oscar for Ghost?
Yeah. Shoot, Jennifer's just a fly girl. What happened to me?
But don't forget, look at what where we are after she hugged you. Look what we have accomplished.
You have to kind of look at it and go, maybe success to me, in the end, for my success in life has been my 3 children. Right. That's it. If I looked and said, look, if you go all your success in life that you've done, if your 3 children are your measure of success, then I'm a successful man. Now, if my measure of success was an Emmy, I got a nomination, but if I got, once I get that Emmy or if I got an Oscar or whatever,
can't do that.
You have to learn that your idea of success is the process. That's what life is. Life's a process. You wake up, you try to find love. You try to keep love. Once you find it, you try to, all these 1,000 things of what our evolution is. And, and I saw a relative of mine who's much older now. And I got to tell you, old age does not look pretty. It looks like, oh man, this looks bad. But I've never heard them complain. I've heard them that understand this is life, that they're happy when they wake up and that's where their attitude is. This is a good day for me. It's if you stop comparing yourself to others and compare yourself to you and you find that happiness, then I think you're successful. Because in the end, the moments that truly make you a human being and truly make you give back and what is our humanity is the love, our kindness, and how we, like you said earlier, don't be a jerk because people remember. I constantly meet people every day that will walk up to me and they go, hey, I worked with you years ago. I always go, was I a jerk?
Was I nice to you?
Was I nice to you? And I've never heard anyone say I was bad. I've never heard that. Maybe because I'm asking them, I look very imposing and intimidating. I've got a bat in my hand. I'm like, let me ask you something. I had a simple rule was very much so of you judge a person by their character of how well they treat someone that can do absolutely nothing for them.
Right.
And that's it. So if I walk on a set or whatever it is, if I see a star or someone else treating an intern or a PA or someone badly, that's my judgment of that person. But I got to tell you, I've had so many actors and stars that I've met that are truly nice people, truly great people. I look at certain people and I go, they're a good person. And luckily when I meet them, they tend to be. I haven't been fooled that often where I go, and Mother Teresa, whoa, that was a surprise.
Oh, she was rough.
Man, that attitude.
She still owes me $50.
So close. I'm a miracle worker. Watch this. What an attitude. Look, that's my leopard. Get away from it. So that's the way I look at it.
That's wonderful. Huh? That's wonderful.
If we fall in love with the process,
you'll be happy.
Enjoy it. That's the thing, because, you're constantly writing, you're constantly doing stuff, you're constantly testing yourself. And it is a business that it's a beautiful art surrounded by a very ugly business. That's the reality. That's truly it. But then again, some of the greatest stuff in our world can be, bastardized or changed or, best intentions or whatever. You have to develop in yourself your purpose. And once you find your purpose and once you say, this is my happiness, this is what I do, then you're giving it the best you can. And as long as you're grateful for little things, I mean, be grateful for you calling me up and putting me on your podcast and having a nice conversation. Be grateful for that. I'm grateful for it. That's the thing to be grateful for. Be grateful for the little things. And that way, when the big things come, you haven't changed. You're still grateful. You're still grateful.
I'll tell you when I let go of that whole comparison thing, and it took me years before I got my first feature done, and I was capable of doing it 15 years ago. I could have shot, and that was the dream. It was the dream is the feature. Yeah. But the thing was, I compared myself to Robert Quentin because I came up in the 90s. So I was like, if my first feature's got to be El Mariachi, it's got to be Reservoir Dogs, it's got to be this big thing. And that pressure, the art can't handle that kind of pressure. Like, it's not built to do that. So when I finally hit 40 and I was attached to another huge project and that project fell through again, and I was just like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm 40. I gotta do it. And then within 30 days, I was shooting my feature with Jilly. I called her up. I'm like, Jill, call your friends. We're going to go make a movie. And we shot this kind of like improv, Curb Your Enthusiasm style, story about her, loosely based on her life.
Yeah.
And we just did it. But I let go. And I also never attached any outcome to it. And that's the other thing with art. Like, if you I need to win the Oscar, you're setting yourself up to be miserable.
It may not, it may not be for you. I mean, that's the thing is that, if you, as an artist, you believe there is a higher power, because I think you have to, as an artist, you have to. I mean, I know Ricky Gervais always talks about he's an atheist, but I think if you really broke it down, he would hope to believe there's a God. I mean, something. Yeah. We all do, because the truth is we, in the place of things in life, we need to have something we can look and go, there's a reason we're here. There's some higher being that goes, there's a reason you're here. And we want to believe that, because as artists, if you look at even the Bible, I've read so many, I went to seminary. Very few people know that. So it says in the beginning in Genesis, it says, God created man in the image of God. He created him, basically. So you're created in the image of God.
Sure.
That's your creator is God.
Yeah, sure.
So if God creates you, your wife, your children, whoever, in the image of this higher power, his act of creation is what art is, to create. And if we're in his reflection or her reflection, then we are creators itself. That is our natural thing to be, as creator, be creative people. And so creation and creativity is storytelling. And it may be done through a commercial. It may be done, because I've cried over commercials when well done.
Oh, yeah.
That haiku in only 30 seconds or a minute, you're going to create this world that will touch you. Then that's beauty. I mean, think about it. It's like I looked at it and I remember, I did one character was Alejandro, was a busboy that was a macho, got all the women. At least he thought he did. It's a great character, because I said, I worked as a busboy. I had 3 jobs in my lifetime that were not related to the entertainment. One was a busboy. And it was so traumatic. After 3 months, I wrote a whole play about it because I was such a bad busboy.
A true artist, sir. A true artist.
That was my drama story.
Iwo Jima. That was my Iwo Jima.
They asked me to bring water, no ice. How am I supposed to remember that?
Like, it scarred me. It scarred me.
Like, the waiters and the busboys were so confident. I remember I saw a busboy in a 10-speed bike drive up to a woman and start talking to her. And I'm thinking, you're on a 10-speed bike with very little command of the language, and you're going up to a woman going, "Hey, how are you?" Yeah, my name is Alejandro, you know.
How'd you doing? How'd you doing?
How you doing? That kind of attitude. And here I'm like this educated, you know, thespian actor type working as a busboy for 3 months, just scandalized by this. And I'm thinking, that man's a happy man.
Yep.
He's honestly happy. And his whole life is happy and he loves life and all this stuff. And I go, that's what you want to be. You want to be the person because every day, you know, I nearly died a few years ago and I came back from, I was in a coma and all this stuff. And people are like, oh my God, I wrote a book about it, Almost White. And it was about Hollywood, but it really was about this accident I had. And so I came back and I remember being in a coma and I almost heard a voice of God going, you want to go back or you want to stay? Like a literal voice. And I can't remember exactly what the accent sounded like, so I can't go, God was Puerto Rican. It's weird. He sounded like Tony Montana. It's like, it's weird. Let me tell you something.
Did you want to go back or did you want to stay here?
Hey, your soul's a little light. You know what I'm saying? A little light. But I remember hearing, you know, do you want to go back and stay? And I said, I still have some things to do. And so I came back on my body and you know, once you feel the pain in your body, you're like, oh no, I changed my mind. I'm going to heaven. But I worked myself through and I just said a simple mantra. This is about 6 years ago. And I said, I will do no harm and I will be kind and I will be compassionate. It's not that I was a bad guy. I don't think I really was. I just said, I'll be grateful. I'll remember being grateful. And that's the thing. That's what you do. So if you sit there and you say, you know, because a lot of times, I'm sure, I think I'm reading you right, and me too, is that we're in this business and we're constantly going, we got to do this. You know, our ambition.
Oh, there's always the ambition of, I want to do more and more.
Sure. Or I want them to recognize me as the genius that I am.
Well, I let that go a while ago. I let that go a long time ago. I mean, this is with age. With age, you just become a little bit like, you know, I just want to be happy. I want to enjoy the process. That's much more important to me than an Oscar. You know, I'm Harvey Feinstein. I just want to be loved. Is that so bad? You know, so I look at it and I go, I want to make the world a better place whenever I can. Yeah. And if not that, then thank God for the world that I've been given. You know, thank God for every little miracle. And, you know, I think, it wasn't me who said it. I think Louis C.K. actually said this. And, you know, he said, you're at 40,000, you're in a plane at 30,000 feet or whatever. It's a miracle. and you think about that. And I go, me and you right now are on a podcast. I'm seeing you. You're seeing me. Mm-hmm. It's a miracle. It is.
You know, as a kid, I'm watching 3 channels, 3 networks, you know.
And when you hear the
yeah. Or better yet, when I grew up in San Diego, we heard the Mexican national anthem because the discs were over on the side of Mexico. Right. So you'd sit there and go, that was I Love Lucy. Then da 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 da. You know, I'm standing tall singing the Mexican national anthem. But I appreciate what you got. That's what I tell anyone that's listening about this business is that you appreciate every single moment. You appreciate everything you got, the miracles all around you. And if you think that way, then it doesn't matter whether you so-called made it or not. Yeah. You're making it. You're making it.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick, I appreciate you coming on the show. It's been an absolute joy talking to you, sir. Where can people find you?
Well, you can always check me out on Najera in America. It's on Revolver Podcasts and on Apple and other stuff. And then check out Latino Thought Makers. I'm doing a show with Cornel West, Dr. Cornel West from Harvard. Wow. We're coming out of college, and that's going to happen January 28th. And then I've got if you check out my site, you know, I have a class on writing that I'm doing with Sanjeev Chopra, Deepak Chopra's brother, and Jackie Ruiz, who's this great publisher. So I'm constantly, even with this COVID, you know.
You got to work. Got to keep going.
You got to work, because if anything, I just look at it and I go, Newton came up with his best theories during pandemic. Shakespeare wrote Lear during a pandemic. And even though we're in this time of pandemic, and I'm like you said, you watch the news and you go, can it get any worse? I'm expecting Godzilla walking down
any
Pennsylvania Avenue.
Any day.
Because anything can happen.
The mole people should be taking over any moment now.
Maybe I'm even thinking maybe that lizard people idea is true. I have no idea. I don't know.
Hey, you never know.
But if I can love my life and be grateful and be kind to another person every day, and that's it. That's what we got to do. And if the greatest production was my kids, then I'm fine with it.
Rick, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, my friend. Thank you so much for what you're doing and continue making people laugh, man, and making people think. So I appreciate you, brother.
Oh, thank you. Great talking to you too, man. Good. Consider you a friend now. We're podcast brothers. Anytime.
I want to thank Rick for coming on the show and dropping his hilarious knowledge bombs on the tribe today. Thank you so much, Rick. If you want to get links to anything we spoke about in this episode, head over to the show notes at bulletproofscreenwriting.tv/106. And if you haven't already, please head over to screenwritingpodcast.com and leave a good review for the show. It really helps us out a lot. Thank you so much for listening, guys. As always, keep on writing no matter what. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast at bulletproofscreenwriting.tv.